Hello and welcome to another episode of All Politics is Local. I'm John Tian, your host. All Politics is Local is a production of the Greater Blackstone Valley Democrats. For more information about the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems, feel free to visit our website at www.gbvdems.org. We have yet another great show planned for you tonight. With me in the studio tonight is current member of the Board of Selectmen here in Milford and candidate for state rep in the Worcester 10th District, Brian Murray. Brian, welcome to All Politics is Local. Thank you very much for being here tonight. And,
Thank you, John. It's nice to be here.
You're very welcome. It's great to have you. And let's just dive right in and talk a little bit about what's going on.
What's going on? Well, I mean, there's a lot going on. Milford, you know, is a very active town. We have a lot of issues going on. And it's a very busy town, and as you indicated, we've also made a foray into running for retired Representative John Fernandes' seat. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, that's great, and it's good to have a solid candidate like you for that seat. It's important that we put a good Democrat back into the State House on Beacon Hill to represent this area. There's a lot of stuff happening in town. We have a little outline of what we're going to talk about tonight. Let's start right off with one of the things that's been going back and forth on Beacon Hill lately is some solar power legislation. They've been going back and forth with various proposals as far as the net metering cap is concerned, and just in solar power in general, how providers of solar power systems can expect to be repaid or be what they can get from the utilities as far as their net metering is concerned. Let's talk a little bit about that. The Senate recently passed what looks to be a fantastic bill as far as solar power is concerned, and it's now being hammered out. The differences between the Senate version and the House version are being hammered out in conference committee. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I don't really know the details of these two particular bills. But I mean, you know, we've had good experience with the net metering agreements in Milford. It's something that I supported as a member of the Board of Selectmen. It's something that you brought forward to us as part of the chairmanship on the Renewable Energy Committee that we have. It makes a lot of sense. I think it's encouraging a very important industry going forward in the Commonwealth and really all over the country. Financially, from the town's perspective, it was a no-brainer. I mean, since we've had it, we've saved more than $300,000 of taxpayer dollars on energy costs. So, you know, that in and of itself ought to be a good enough reason to go forward with it.
Right.
So, you know, in very broad terms, it's something that I support very much. I think it's very important that we go in that direction, as well as wind and any other alternative energy source to try to get us away from the fossil fuel. So, you know, that's an issue that, you know, I would be looking forward to working on if I'm elected.
Okay. One thing that we didn't put on our outline, and I'm now thinking that we probably should have, is the Spectra pipeline, the gas pipeline. So let's talk a little bit about the pipeline. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. You know, we had gotten information on it. I'm trying to think now. Oh gosh, when was it? A few months ago, or maybe the beginning of the year. And they had the informational meeting at the hotel in Milford, and I went down to that and met with the representatives. Asked them to give us the map, so the board and our town engineering department would see exactly where it's going to be touching in Milford. And of course, when you talk to them, you know, everything's great. You know, this is going to bring much needed, you know, gas to our electric plants, and it's going to lower everybody's rates, and it's not going to be obtrusive, and there's no danger, and you know, all of that. So it sounds very good when you hear that side of it. But now, as the project is progressing, you know, more and more information is coming out about some of the things that are happening in other parts of the country with these pipelines in terms of explosions and leaks and that sort of thing. I think looking at it overall, probably one of the most troubling things I see is the tax. They don't call it a tax, but basically there's going to be a surcharge.
Right, they were talking about a surcharge on your electric bill.
That's it. So how does that, save you money? I mean, it's a private investment, but they're asking the public, the consumer, to pay for it on a separate surcharge. So,
Right.
I mean, I think if, we ought to hold their feet to the fire, and if in fact it is going to save us money, then leave the rates the way they are and don't hit us with the surcharge.
Right.
Right.
If there's truly a savings here, then let the savings
Sure.
pile up.
Pick up your savings yourself. So, it's somewhat suspect that there will be a savings. It's moving along in the federal regulatory process. Generally, Milford, we've always had a very capable town engineer to kind of guide us through these federal issues. We did with the stormwater guidelines and other things that come down. We're a little bit of a disadvantage right now because, as you know, our town engineer left, Lonnie Reese, who was excellent, and we just hired a new town engineer.
Right.
So it's going to take Mike Dean a little bit of time, I think, to
get up to speed.
To get up to speed on that.
Yeah.
I believe there's a time period, and I'm not sure what it is. I think it's coming up in the fall for us to comment preliminarily before they do their final application with the federal government, and I think that that's something that we as a Board of Selectmen ought to do on behalf of the town.
Yeah, now when you talk about FERC, that's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission?
That's right.
Right.
That's
right.
right.
And they're the people who ultimately make the decision. It's really kind of out of our hands here at the local level.
It is.
Although we can express opposition if we want to.
Right.
It's really up to the federal government. I think that there was something in front of Beacon Hill recently, too, where the surcharge for to pay for the pipeline was actually defeated, that the surcharge will not be allowed to be put onto our electric bills.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that was, I think a very slippery way of trying to boost profits.
Sure.
And, when I went to that informational meeting at the hotel, I mean, there's no mention of that.
Right.
We didn't hear about any surcharge or anything. We just heard I was going to reduce energy rates and increase energy availability and all of that sort of thing.
Right.
So that to me is not the proper way to handle a capital investment for a private company.
Right, and we're also looking at it from a standpoint of just exactly how much gas do we need here in Massachusetts. And I think there's only like 2 or 3 weeks out of the year where supply was not meeting demand due to both gas being used as a heating fuel and gas being used to generate a lot of electricity here in the state. And
a lot of these groups who are now doing more research on this, and they're seeing the entire network of this piping and seeing where it's going, and it's leading folks to believe that really isn't to increase availability in New England, it's to get it up so that they can export it offshore and make more money.
Sure, export it to a place where the gas prices are higher.
Yeah, make more money on the international market.
Right, in Northern Europe, et cetera.
Yeah, and locally would be paying for that investment.
Right.
So I mean, I think there's a lot of information to get on that, and locally right now where I'm at, I want to try to get that information to our Board of Selectmen, so whatever influence we could have on FERC, we need to do that.
Right, need to do that in a proper
Sure.
in a proper manner.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, getting back to solar a little bit too, there is a solar bylaw in town. It was adopted by town meeting several years ago. One of the shortcomings of that bill that I didn't realize at the time, I was a town meeting member at the time, and I spoke in favor of it and I voted for it. But one of the shortcomings of that bylaw that I didn't realize at the time is that it precludes the creation of solar power systems greater than 25 kilowatts in any residential zone in town. Where I fell down was I didn't realize that all the schools in town are zoned residential. So that precludes us from putting large solar power systems on school roofs.
Yeah, and I mean, solar energy has come so far in such a short period of time, and like any zoning bylaw, it certainly needs to be reviewed, looked at, and probably revised as time progresses and things change. So, I mean, now with the prevalence of solar energy, I think the feeling that, we really need to go in that direction. And if you're talking about something like a school, which I think all of them have these large flat roofs, which I think are pretty ideal for solar panels, then that's a change that we ought to look at. So, I would probably bring that to the attention of our town planner. He monitors those zoning bylaws pretty well.
Right.
It seems every town meeting we have at least, 3, maybe half a dozen amendments, changes, revisions.
Yep.
And that sounds like that's ripe for one.
All right, well, I'll certainly bring that up with Larry, and just to give myself a plug for the Renewable Energy Committee, my committee is now moribund. I don't have enough members. A lot of people have moved on to other pursuits. We did meet regularly for about 5 years there, and that's when we did the work, like you said, on our net metering cap agreements that we've, net metering credit agreements that we have that are saving the town some money.
Yeah.
So I'd like to put out a call to my viewers, people, anybody who's interested in serving on the Renewable Energy Committee, please send me an email. My email address is in the credits at the end of the show. I would love to have a couple more people onto the committee, and I've already discussed this with both you and Bill Buckley. I'd love to get a couple of new people named to the committee and begin doing things again.
Sure.
And that's certainly, the zoning bylaw change would certainly be something that we would bring to the attention of the Board of Selectmen and Larry Duncan.
I'll announce that at our next selectman meeting, and folks can bring their application right there to Town Hall.
Okay.
And we can keep it in the talent bank and try to get that committee restocked, because I think it's a very important one with the way things are going today, and it really ought to be an active one. And when it produced some very, very favorable results.
Yeah, you can't argue with taxpayers saving some money.
Sure.
So that's the kind of thing that we want to see more of.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very, very important committee.
Okay, so let's look at what else we're looking at here. Milford Pond. That's something that is pretty much finished up now. We did spend a good bit of money on that. We got some federal dollars for that. How's it looking over there?
Well, I mean, I guess unless you go in the pond, I think it kind of looks the same, but really everything that was done was under the surface. So, I'm trying to think, I think it was about 40 acres, because there was a zone there about 120 acres, and I think we did about a third of it, and dredged it down to, I believe, about 12, 15 feet, whatever that number was.
Okay.
So, it started out many, many years ago as a project to try to clean up the pond, and again, as things change over time, it really became an ecological project and also an environmental project. During the course of that pendency of the project, the EPA came out with their stormwater issue in terms of trying to reduce phosphorus. Milford, very important, because we're one of the communities at the head of the Charles River, which the pond feeds right out of.
Yep. And the pond was getting overgrown, probably as a result of phosphorus as well. Right?
Probably, I guess that's a lot of what caused it. So to take all of that vegetation out of there, move a lot of the material off to the side. Environmentally, it's a great, great project. It's brought back the pond use. I know I go by there, I see boats there, which, you didn't
see before.
You never saw that before.
Right.
So to try to use that as a community asset, I think is wonderful. And also to get some, I guess, credit, if you will, or at least some reduction of the phosphorus, improvement on our stormwater runoff. That's just a happy byproduct of the project.
Sure.
And it was funded almost entirely federal, to the extent of over $5 million.
Right.
Milford's investment was relatively small, and much of it in kind. With the services of the town engineer.
The services, I remember one of the town meetings, it was somewhere around $400,000, $500,000, something along those lines.
I think so, yeah. I think that's probably what the total.
Yeah. An investment well spent.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, anytime you work on the environment, you can't lose, because I mean, this is what we need, all of us. I mean, we grow up, we live. I mean, we need water, we need air.
Yeah.
And if you ignore it, it's going to get ruined.
Right.
And things, I think, have been ignored for too long.
Right. Well, you think back to the days, you and I are probably old enough that we could think back to the days before the EPA. Where I grew up in Waterbury, we had a little town called Naugatuck to the south of us. The rubber plant was there. Uniroyal had a plant there. And every August, my parents would bundle all 7 of us into the station wagon, and we'd go to the rubber plant and get new sneakers, because we could get factory seconds at the factory seconds store there, and Mom could save a few dollars, and we'd all get our new sneakers for back to school. we hated going because of the odor.
Really?
There was pipes. There was these gigantic, like 8-foot
Yeah.
wide pipes
Yeah.
dumping raw chemical compounds into the river. And the river ran this sickly yellowish green color, and it smelled. It was so bad you could taste it on the tip of your tongue. It was that
Sure,
bad.
sure.
And that was in the days before the EPA. And look at what we were
sure.
doing. It ran
Yeah.
that color. The river was dead
Yeah.
from Naugatuck all the way down to where it merged with the Housatonic and then
Yeah.
went out to Long Island Sound. That river was
and
dead.
people either didn't know or didn't care.
They didn't care.
Or didn't realize that it was a problem, and we had that at Milford Pond.
Mm-hmm.
The building right now where the, what is it, the clothing place, Planet, it's the former Stylon's building.
Okay, yeah.
But as you go down Sumner Street, oh my God, Planet Aid.
Planet Aid.
Planet
Yep.
Aid pretty much has that building now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember going down to Fino Field as a kid, probably 10, 11 years old on my bicycle, and you went back the back way, and there used to be a railroad where the bike trail is now, and you go behind there, and exactly what you described was there.
Yeah.
It was a big pipe with this colored water that came out
Yeah.
because they made tiles or whatever they did.
Right.
All the broken tiles were there, and it ran right into the pond.
Right.
And of course, as we got into the bike trail, we found out that all of that soil is contaminated.
Yep.
With all kinds of metals.
Yeah, lead and everything else. Yeah.
Magnesium, all these kinds of things.
Yep.
And God knows what I'm going to have because I mean, as a little kid, I used to go and you'd see the
To
water.
plan it, yeah.
Sure. You never dreamed,
Yeah.
what it was.
Right.
So all of that contaminant built up over time. So now that we know, I think it's incumbent upon our generation and future generations, to correct those mistakes.
Yeah, correct those mistakes and get the environment back to where it needs to be.
Sure, absolutely.
We're products of our environment, and
Absolutely.
we don't need to be poisoning ourselves. There's
No.
enough poison in the world.
But I mean, at the same time, and we went through this with the EPA, I don't think that the EPA's initial approach was a practical one.
Not at all. The amount of money that was going to cost Milford area businesses was just, it was illogical and really just.
Sure. So I mean, I think when we met with them and we had a lot of help with the federal officials, I know Senator Kerry's office at that time was very, very helpful. Representative Richard Neal was very, very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And we got the EPA's attention and we got them to do an actual cost analysis. And because they were saying, well, the work that we're requiring shouldn't cost your community more than $100,000 or something. And our town engineer at the time, Mike Santoro, said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I
He was
think
looking at millions.
Yeah, I think this is going to be about $60 million.
Yeah.
So we finally got them to do an evaluation, have a consultant come in and really price it out. And they came back and they said, well, guess what? The consultant says your guy's right. So that put them back on their heels a little bit, and it allowed Milford, I think, and Franklin and Bellingham, because we were the three getting hit by it, to address it locally,
Right.
With some changes to the bylaws, so new developments that come in, you'd be able to do some stormwater retention devices, with some work to find our own stormwater drains. And Representative Fernandez was very helpful in getting the bill passed to ban phosphorus and fertilizer,
Yep.
to eliminate that. And even now, at this most recent town meeting, you see the Highway Department got a matching grant to make kind of a natural vegetative cleaning area at that intersection of Sumner Street and Diller.
Okay.
If you
Yep.
go down there right before you hit the bike trail,
Yep.
off to the right, there's this little block of land that's, open vegetation. So now they're going to work on that to make it kind of a natural filtering.
A natural filter to fuse up those phosphates before they can get out.
Sure.
Excellent.
Excellent. So, we're trying to approach it on all of these different fronts that are more manageable
Right.
than what was initially thrown at us.
Right.
It's not that we, I don't think anybody disagrees with the goal, but it's a question of reality and what's practical and what's not.
Yeah. Can you imagine the exodus of businesses that had that gone through the way that the EPA initially wanted it? I mean,
Yeah, it just wouldn't happen,
Right.
know. So I mean, it's one thing for an agency to look at things and say, hey, we've got to correct this issue. Well, okay, it's going to cost a lot of money. Oh, you're not going to give us any money? Okay, so now, so we're on our own. That's not going to happen. You've got to let us do it, in a way that's going to make sense,
Right.
and not hurt people.
Right. Well, one of the great things, Brian, that I think about you going to Beacon Hill to represent this town is one of the big problems that we have on Beacon Hill is that we get these unfunded mandates. I had Suzanne Bump on my show a while ago, and that's one of the things that she does is she examines those unfunded mandates and sees if it's really truly unfair to the town. I think having somebody like you with your experience as, how many years have you been on the Board of Selectmen?
Well, this is my 16th year,
Yeah.
and then even before that, I was 12 years on the school committee.
Right.
Which, and I think that's even gotten worse since I've left. But that area was a lot of unfunded mandates.
Right,
You know, so
right.
I've been on that end.
Right, you've been
where-
on the receiving end
Yes,
of those unfunded
yes,
mandates, and I think that
yes.
having your your style of thinking on Beacon Hill to represent us, I think that that's just going to be absolutely awesome. I don't think that we're certainly not going to lose by sending you out there to represent us.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I think you're right. The experience that I've had at a local level, gives me a different perspective as opposed to someone who's not. Just write a bill, pass a law, let someone else worry
Right,
about it.
let somebody else worry about the consequences.
Yeah,
kind of a damn them
no.
torpedoes attitude.
Yeah,
You can't,
No, it's very difficult for municipalities and private businesses, to implement some of these things. That's going to be a huge consideration when you look at any type of bill that you want to become law.
Right. So, excellent. Let's move on to, we did get into the head of the Charles, and we talked about the zoning bylaw. The Armory project. We talked about the Armory
Yeah.
project wrapping up, and also that gets right back to the phosphorus again, because there was something done there to help ameliorate the phosphorus issues, right?
I mean, as you know, that was a complete renovation project. The building was built in 1911, and generally speaking, there really was not much done to it at all.
Since then.
Yeah, and it was crumbling from the inside out. So, we went forward, and did the renovation, about a $5 million project. It's up and running now. It's absolutely remarkable. It's a big part of Milford's history, Milford's heritage. That kind of a granite building, I think, is unique to our town. We have so many of them. It would be a shame not to utilize it. To retrofit it, I think, to today's use to help young people, I think is so appropriate. And one of the things that was part of the renovation project was a stormwater receptor. So as you face the youth center, buried to the left, the roadway used to get into the fire station is this huge concrete, which I would call a strainer. So we reworked all of the drainage around the building so that it would funnel into this receptor. That basically strains out a lot of the impurities, some of the leaves or other natural things that come down, asphalts, oils, all of these things that go in. And then that water goes off into the town's general stormwater system to run off. So, that's the kind of thing that we've tried to wrap into building projects to ameliorate some of the stormwater problems. Now, you look at it, you don't even know that. You know,
you don't even know that it's there.
You don't even know that it's there, you know. But boy, when we were doing it, we knew it was there because it was probably about as big as this room. I mean, it was amazing. I remember I talked to Vonnie. I said, "What are we doing with that thing?" Oh, it's going to be buried. You're not going to see it. So I mean, that was just another part of the project.
And now that does have to be cleaned out periodically because it gets filled with
so there's the manhole cover, and
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure what the time period is, whether it's 6 months or a year or whatever. But that's a maintenance area that they've got to go down and make sure that all of that material's out of there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's excellent that the Armory is back in business.
Yeah.
The youth center is back in business. That's really good to hear. Big project there, and
It was a tough project because of the age and the interior. So much of it was covered until we started tearing apart some of the walls. We didn't know how bad the interior structural supports were, and we really had to do a lot of different changes to build up that interior.
we find any asbestos when we were tearing it apart.
Very small amount of asbestos.
Oh, good.
Asbestos was not a major item on this thing. That, oh gosh, I don't even think, I think that was under $20,000. Yeah, no, there was not much asbestos. Everything else under the sun, but not asbestos.
Well, good for that.
Yeah.
Woodland School is another one that's being done right now. How far along are we? When does that open?
As far as I know, they're on track to open up for the school season. I mean, I haven't had a whole lot of involvement with that project, but I think it's a remarkable project in the sense that it's going to be the largest elementary school in the Commonwealth. You know, it's a little disappointing that you've got to, you know, tear down and get rid of the old building, but I
Right.
suppose it, you know, had its useful life, and
It did.
you know,
My daughter went there.
sure,
My
yeah.
daughter went there, and I coached basketball there.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that was fun. I really enjoyed doing those things in those days.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's kind of sad. I went back to the Memorial Day program at Woodland this year, and I hadn't gone in quite some time, and I wanted to go because I figured it would be the last
Yeah, it's
one.
gonna be the last one,
and probably
yeah.
the last time I'll be in the building.
Right.
And you know, like, well, 3 of my kids went there,
Sure.
and I spent a lot of time there when I was on the school committee. So you know, that has a certain amount of memories, certain
Yeah.
amount of nostalgia.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a remarkable new project, and as far as I can tell, it's obviously completely energy efficient.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a great addition to the town,
Yeah.
a great addition to the school system.
Yeah, when the committee was discussing various things about the design of the building, I got to do a little bit of input as chair of Renewable Energy Committee. I got to
Oh,
at least
good.
to talk to them a little bit about you know, what we could possibly do to make it, like, you know, solar ready. I wanted
Sure.
to have them. I don't know if they actually came through with it or not, but I asked them to install conduits. So that we're ready to run cable right up to the roof,
Yeah.
and pull solar power off the roof. Of course, not realizing that anything bigger than 25 kilowatts wasn't going to be allowed.
Well, we got to change that.
We can change that.
We can
Exactly.
change
That's,
that,
laws
sure.
laws were made to be amended.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. You know, times
So,
change, and
yeah.
you know, laws have to change with
Yeah.
it.
So I mean, I told them things like, you know, ideally I'd like to see a pitched roof. I'd like to see a south-facing pitched roof with you know, standing seam metal and all that kind of stuff. I don't think any of that happened.
Well, I think that's really difficult on those kind of
Oh, yeah.
buildings. Not that they're
Yeah.
commercial buildings, but you know, in that type of an institutional building, because I think they need the flat roof to keep all of the HVAC equipment.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. There are other considerations besides you know, my pipe dreams. So, so let's talk a little bit about the reuse of Middle School East. That's one of the big projects that I know that Steve Treadle
Yeah.
was working on that committee to come up with some you know, various proposals for what we can do there.
Yeah, the selectmen appointed a committee to examine that building to see, you know, what the possible uses might be. And Steve and the group came before us a few months ago and gave us some ideas in terms of possible municipal uses and also possible commercial uses. My perspective at that time was that that information needed to be brought to the school committee, because technically they still have the control, the jurisdiction of that particular building. And it's really up to them to decide whether or not they want to use it for any of their means. And if they don't, then it would become surplus property for the town that the Board of Selectmen would then have to
Right. It would kind of fold back into the
Right.
town at that point.
then
Yeah.
make a decision on whether or not, you know, there's going to be a municipal need or private need. You know, at least the front of the building, I think, is very attractive. You know, it's an old building. I think it's, what, 1923 or 28 or something like that. It's
Yep.
right on the building.
Right. It's on the cornerstone.
Yeah, you know, and it's been a big part of the town for so many years. The gym, I mean, you know, my daughter, you know, she played basketball, but actually both of my girls, but my older one, she said that was the best gym floor she ever played on.
Really?
Yeah, and
Wow.
she played all 4 years. So the gym is still good, the bones are good. It would be a shame to, you know, to lose that, to tear it down. You know, I don't know. I mean, I think the ball is in the school committee's court to try to see what they want to do. I think it might make sense from their perspective to utilize a portion of it for some of their needs, whether it's administrative or
Right.
specialized programs. I think it might make sense to try to partner with an educational entity, whether it's a college, a vocational school, an alternative school. Maybe that type of entity could contribute something towards the renovation cost, the upkeep cost, that kind of stuff. I don't know if the prospects for a private development are that great. Certainly, the money that the town would realize for a sale would not be significant, and the town would basically be banking on a development and then eventual real estate taxes.
Right, but like you were saying before the show, if any developer were to come in, he'd have to bring the building up to code.
Absolutely.
And there's going to be a major expense there. So like you say, it's when you're looking at how much is this building worth
Right.
to a developer, it's not worth very much.
Right. And the odd thing about it, which I'm sure you remember, it's at so many different levels.
Yes.
Because you've got the part that fronts Main Street,
Right.
and then the part on Sumner Street, and it's all these different levels, and that gets into the accessibility issue and just drives the cost up. So, there's a lot of problems. But I think, like anything, it's just one step at a time, and I think right now it's up to the school committee to see what, in fact, they might want to do with it.
Okay. So.
But it is, it's a major issue facing the town.
Yeah.
No question.
No question about that. Let's get back to a little bit of statewide politics. Since you are
Sure.
running for state reps, statewide politics is certainly something to discuss. Ballot questions coming up on this year. We were looking online earlier, and what did we find? 70 of them?
I think there's more than I thought.
Way more than I thought.
Yeah.
There was at least a dozen that appear to be certified.
Seems so, yeah.
Yeah, safe whaling and all kinds of stuff, or whale safe fishing.
I'll have to research that one.
Well, we're not in Gloucester, so
Right, yeah.
maybe that's not something that we need to be so concerned about.
Yeah.
But let's talk about a couple of the ballot questions that are coming up. There's one on charter schools.
Sure.
That's going to be increasing charter schools.
Yeah, the question, I think, wants to raise the cap on charter schools.
Yep.
And, generally that's not something that I think is a good idea. I'm not really in favor of charter schools.
Yeah, I myself, I'm not in favor of them either. I think that charter schools take money from public schools. And they take the best and brightest and leave the public schools really struggling with the kids that maybe are tougher to teach.
I think that's exactly the case. And, Milford, we don't have a charter school, so we haven't experienced that. But I know some of the other surrounding communities, I think Ashland has gotten hit, very hard. When they take that set off from the state aid, it puts the community in a really difficult financial position.
Right.
So I don't support that question. I don't think that the cap ought to be raised. I remember when I was on the school committee and this whole concept of the charter schools started, coming about, and, my thought was, well, okay, if you want to relax standards or if you want to allow more freedoms or whatever you want to do, why don't you do it here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do it in your public schools.
Yeah, let's do it in our public schools,
Right.
So that's not one that I'd be in favor of.
I know that WGBH, the NPR station here in town, they've been advertising that they're going to have a ballot question hackathon coming up in a little while. They're asking for volunteers to come and help them sort through the campaign finance, the OCPF, the Office of Campaign and Political Finance. They want to sort through those records to see who's backing these questions and to really get to the ultimate, it's the old follow the money, right?
Exactly.
I mean, follow the money has always been the
Exactly.
way to figure out what's going on with a certain question. And so that's
Exactly.
what they're looking at, is to follow the money and try to get to the bottom of,
And I think that's the issue with the casino question, because I think it's being supported by someone who, or an entity or group or whatever, that actually wants to have the slot casino or something like that.
Okay.
I think so. I think I read that somewhere. So I think that same concept holds true on that.
Sure, and I think following the money on all of these questions is going to be a real eye opener for people as far as,
because then once
whether
you
or not-
find out who it is and what they stand for and what they're looking for,
Right.
then you know what's driving this thing and what the consequences could be.
Right. Now, I was very vocal as far as being part of Casino Free Milford back a few years ago when we were looking at a casino here in town. And I also, after that, became involved with the Yes on 3 campaign, the people who wanted to repeal the casino deal. That was what they wanted to do there. And I went out and I did some
I don't think you have to, because they haven't got off the ground.
They haven't, no.
Yeah.
They've got the one in Plainfield, but it seems to be failing
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
I mean, basically it's supposed to be just a slots parlor, and it's not doing well at all. Twin River Casino is crushing it, and they're right down the street. They're not far away at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Plainville's doing. I haven't gone there. It's not really my cup of tea. I mean, I drive by there. I see it on
I've driven past it a couple of
495.
times, yeah.
I don't see any noticeable traffic. I don't see anything like that. So I don't know who goes there. I imagine people do. But I think the ballot question is looking to have another slots parlor. Is that what it is? Or?
I'm not even certain. I know that they want to expand gaming licenses, but I'm not certain
Yeah.
whether it's
So
going to be a full-blown casino.
I would not be in support of that question. I mean, the state hasn't even gotten off the ground with the
what we
initial
have, yeah.
casino law. Why
Yeah.
would you ever want to expand it at this point? Doesn't make any sense. So I don't support that ballot question. Plainville, I mean, I don't know how they're doing or how they're not doing.
From what I understand, they're not doing well.
Probably not,
It's empty.
And-
People go in there and it's empty. There's nothing
And I
happening.
know the problems in Everett, between, Somerville and Boston, and
Right.
of course the contaminated site. So who knows if
Right.
that's ever going to start.
If that's ever going to break ground.
And
Yeah.
then the one spot that seemed to be ready to go, that got delayed in Springfield. So I don't know where they're at on that in terms of the construction.
Well, not only that, but Connecticut is putting a new casino in Enfield. So that, to anybody from Connecticut, from that portion of Connecticut who would drive north to Springfield, they don't have to go so far.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, these business people, I mean, they're probably smarter than I, but at some point, what's the saturation point?
Yeah.
I mean, when do you not make money at something like that?
Right. You've got a point of diminishing returns.
Yes.
How much?
Yeah.
How much
Yeah.
are people actually going to spend?
Yeah.
Gambling.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't go to casinos. I mean, the Milford thing, and that was a political issue, and people who oppose me or oppose other people tried to use it politically. But I mean, I just tried to do what I thought was right. And if it was an opportunity for the townspeople to consider, my job was to make sure they had enough information to make an informed decision.
Right.
Good, bad, or ugly, at least you need to know what you're voting on. Because, the question is, well, do you want a casino? Well, that's like saying, do you want a car? What kind of car do you want? Do you want an SUV? Do you want a 2-door, a 4-door?
A Lamborghini.
Right. So it's a very generic term. So how can you make a meaningful decision on that?
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? So if we could flesh that out, we found out what the agreement was, we found out what the revenue, at least, was purported to be. We knew what the ramifications were going to be in terms of traffic, environmental. Now you have your information.
Right.
Now you know what kind of car is on the market. Do you want that car or not?
Right. And by letting the voters decide, that's democracy.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's also what the statute required, by the way. But beyond that, and you and I have talked about that, I think it was necessary to really put the issue at rest in the community.
Yes.
Because there was so many competing interests. People felt strongly one way or the other. I think really the only way to settle it was a vote, and now it has been settled.
Right.
And it's been settled in the community,
Right.
and
the community voted.
And the community voted,
Yeah.
and I think that was the proper way to do it. So I
Yeah.
know there were people that tried to use it in a certain way, but something, if I can't do the job the way I think it's supposed to be done, then I shouldn't be there. And to me, the way to do it was to get the most information out to people and let them vote.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what I tried to do.
Yeah, well, that was quite an exercise. It was one of the biggest stories in Milford history. Certainly.
The easiest thing to do would have been to, no, we don't want it, no. And I would have had my summer back because, and that was my son's, last year of college, baseball.
Yep.
So, personally, it was a very difficult summer for me. But that was not the right thing to do. That would have been the easy thing to do.
Right. Right.
But, the statute required a vote. I thought it was important for people to vote on it because it was such a significant issue. And why should 1 or 3 people make a decision for a community of 30,000?
Right.
I just didn't think that was the right thing to do.
And I was proud of Milford for the number of people that showed up for a single issue ballot question. 58% of the registered voters in town showed up and voted. And I was proud of my town.
It was great.
It was great.
It was
really
great.
It was
it's great to get that kind of involvement. The outgrowth of that casino issue is the citizens group.
Yeah.
But for the casino, you might not have the citizens
Right.
group.
We might not have a Citizens for Milford, and look at the great things that Citizens for Milford's been able to do.
Yeah.
Just in the last couple of years of their existence, the candidate forums that we hold, the cleanup days that we do, all those things are.
I think it's all great stuff. It aroused an awareness in people that might not otherwise have been there.
Right.
So how can you go wrong with that?
Yeah, you
It
can't.
wasn't easy. Like
Yeah.
I said, it would have been a lot easier for me to say no, we don't want it. Casinos are bad. But I wouldn't have been able to sleep at night.
Sure. Bringing it to the voters, I think, was the greatest thing that we could do.
That's what we tried to do.
Yeah,
I think it worked out well.
It really did.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Marijuana legalization is also on the ballot questions this
Yeah.
fall.
Well, as you know, Milford, I mean, we, one of the communities that, got a license for the medicinal marijuana. And that facility is in the process of being put together. And I think that that's a great idea. I supported that when the business owner came before us at the Selectman. They worked with the police chief. I don't have the level of concern that I think some people have. But, I mean, it is going to be secure. I suppose it could get broken into and that sort of thing. So we're working on the police chief, with the police department works hand in hand with this owner to make sure that that business is going to be a properly secure business. Taking the next step to the legalizing marijuana, I don't see it as a bad thing. I suppose at this point in time, I would like to see the medicinal marijuana get circulated and see how that works and just, get there maybe a little bit more gradually. But I don't have the opposition to marijuana that a lot, I don't see it as this really bad thing. Liquor, I think, is a lot worse.
Sure.
Certainly pills, I think, are a lot worse. The
opiate abuse, another thing that we wanted to talk about.
The Vicodin, the Percocet,
Yeah.
To me that's, 10 times more harmful than marijuana. And from the medicinal point of view, who am I, to prevent something from somebody who's undergoing cancer treatments
Sure.
or has had a major surgery, and that's how they want to, deal with pain relief.
Right.
Why not?
Why not?
Why not? It's natural. I think the time has come. You're seeing how it's working across the country.
Right.
It certainly makes a lot of sense.
Well, another thing about we talked about earlier, follow the money. If you
Yeah.
follow the money on opposition to medicinal marijuana, guess who you'll find?
Probably the pharmaceutical.
Exactly, big pharma.
Yeah.
You'll find the
Yeah.
pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
Because they'd rather come out with a pill that people have to take every day rather than see something that people can grow in their private solarium.
I think the pills are awful. I've seen it, with clients, I've seen it, with family members. And, the way these things get prescribed are like candy. They're very powerful. They're very addictive. They're very disabling. I am not a proponent of, this super pain medication. To me, something that's natural, that works to alleviate that is so much more healthy.
Sure, and it also helps with things like digestion, and if you're on chemotherapy and you can't eat, it really does help with,
Sure.
with clearing out your digestive tract and helping you to want to eat again.
Absolutely.
And all those types of things. I look at the legalization of marijuana as the logical next step. It ought to be legalized. It ought to be taxed.
Absolutely, and then you're going to be able to regulate it.
Right.
So
Right now, kids can get it from anybody because it's widely available.
Absolutely.
So by taking that illegal part of it out, suddenly you can regulate it, and now kids are not going to be able to get it as readily.
It's like prohibition. I mean,
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, let's outlaw alcohol. Well, that didn't work out so well.
Right.
And this has been the same way for so many years. But I think, as the generations that were more familiar with it are older now and in the decision-making area, this is what you're seeing. That it's not the what was the old movie, Reefer Madness?
Reefer Madness. I saw that when I was in college. I think I may have been stoned when I saw it. Yeah, Reefer Madness was awesome.
So I mean, I think people realize that not all these crazy things are gonna happen.
Right.
Right.
So
I think the only hesitancy I have is I'd like to try to crawl before we walk, and the medicinal marijuana, it still hasn't gotten up and running.
Right.
I'd really like to see that get its feet on the ground and go forward.
Well, I think the people who crafted the ballot question did the right thing. They looked at a couple of other states where marijuana has been legalized, and they kind of they're taking a best of both worlds approach. One of the problems that they have in Colorado is that while they've made it legal for people to sell marijuana, there's really nowhere for people to consume it. And so the Massachusetts law actually allows for setting up places where you could actually consume your marijuana on the premises, kind of like a marijuana bar.
Sure, yeah.
And it just makes more sense than putting people out on the street.
Sure.
Basically all the societal impacts that'll happen from something like that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that they perhaps have crafted the question the right way. And we'll see what happens there. To stay on the topic of drugs, let's talk a little bit about the opiate crisis that we have here in Massachusetts, actually everywhere these days. We've actually seen it impact us here in Milford. There was an article on either the Milford Patch or the Town Crier, I can't remember where I saw it, but this past weekend we had several overdoses.
It happens almost on a daily basis. It's something that our police department, our first responders have to deal with. And it's something that we've been dealing with for quite some time. I mean, as the Board of Selectmen, every quarter we get reports from all the licensing, the bars, restaurants, and you know, for so many years it were fights at the bars, people getting into fights, all this stuff. And then, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago, maybe, I can't remember, the time seems to melt, but all of a sudden we started seeing stuff popping up at some of the restaurants, the fast food restaurants, hypodermic needles, people passed out in the parking lot, people passed out in the in the bathroom, ambulance calls.
Right.
So, we sent the police department out to these fast food and coffee shops to really get in there and see what was going on. And the management really, they weren't aware, they didn't have a clue, and they were just seeing with the after effects. So what we've tried to do is have the police department work educationally with these license holders so that they can see the red flags if someone comes into their facility.
Right, to recognize what's happening here.
To recognize it before, God forbid, something happens in the bathroom and you've got a major crisis. So, we're much more proactive, much more educational on that than I think maybe some other communities. And the chief has done a great job in terms of coordinating counseling services through Amy Leone so that people that he comes in contact with, the first stop isn't necessarily the jail cell, it's to try to get them off and do some counseling and try to break the
dependency and bring people back to being a productive member of society.
Absolutely.
That's what's really most important is to bring people back.
Absolutely.
These people are not a lost cause. They've got an addiction problem. It's more of a public health crisis than it is a crime crisis.
Right.
And if we nip this in the bud and bring them back, think of the benefits to society.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is the supply issue.
Right.
And
it's cheap and widely available.
Right.
Yeah.
And the police department has recognized that as well, and they've worked very effectively, I think, with state police, investigators, DEA, to try to crack down on the sellers.
Right.
So, the profit makers on the drugs. The police department, I think, has done a great job in terms of trying to stop it on that end.
Yep.
But the user end, like you say, that's a totally different dynamic.
Yeah, and I think there was a major bust just 3 or 4 weeks ago here in town, wasn't there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
With someone with a large quantity of heroin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it happens frequently, and the police department works very cooperatively, very informatively with a lot of different agencies to try to crack down on that end. But your user, your dependent, I think needs a different tact, a different approach.
Right, a different approach.
And we've been doing that in Milford, and we've been doing it quietly for a number of years.
Yeah. Getting back to Citizens for Milford, when we do our town cleanups, that's one of the things that we had to incorporate into our cleanup routine was advice about what to do when you find a needle. We bring sharps containers with us so that people can dispose of them safely and all that kind of stuff. And that, it's something that you wouldn't think you would have to do, but you sure do.
Yeah.
You have to be very aware of this stuff. And
well, I got to say, I mean, the 2 years that you've had the cleanup, I've done Water Street both years, and happy to say I haven't found any needles, but boy, I found a lot of nip bottles.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that out there.
They're all over the place.
And I don't ever remember that, but I mean, that seems to be something that's going on too, that nip bottle of liquor and stuff. But that cleanup day is a great thing to do. It really is a great thing to do.
The Citizens for Milford's a great group. I'm proud to be part of them. We really do some good stuff in town. At one of our recent meetings, at the end of the meeting, I just said to the whole group, I have to say, look, guys, congratulations on what we're doing. Look at what we talked about tonight, where we are with all these various projects and what we're up to. We arranged Joe Kennedy. We arranged an evening with Joe Kennedy
Yes, that
over
was a
at
good night.
over at St. Mary's.
Yep.
That was at the time we were planning the second cleanup day.
Yep.
You know, all the things that we talked about. You know, the various stuff that we've done in town.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of them. Speaking of Citizens for Milford, they are likely, considering that you may have opposition in your run for state rep, they are likely to hold a candidates forum should your opposition ever really surface. We know her name, but that's really all we know about her.
Sure, yeah.
If she ever surfaces and decides to actually campaign for the office, would you commit to being part of a Citizens for Milford candidate forum for your state rep?
Sure,
please?
absolutely. Just
Terrific.
tell me when and where, and I'll be there.
Okay,
Yeah.
I will let the Citizens for Milford
Absolutely.
people know
Yeah.
all about
Absolutely.
that.
Yep.
So we are running down to about the last 5 or 10 minutes of our time here. It's amazing how quickly an hour
Really,
goes
yeah.
by, right?
Yeah.
One of the things, again, near and dear to my heart is gambling. And, I'm not opposed to all gambling, okay?
I thought you liked gambling. You said
I participate in
Yeah.
things like football pools and
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. What I'm against is I'm against a corporate sponsor of a rigged game, and that's all that casinos are. Is it's a corporate sponsorship of a rigged game. And one of the things that the state is doing is the lottery. The state lottery stuff is everywhere. It's endemic. We talked earlier before the show about you go over to Tedeschi's to get a cup of coffee, and what do you find? You find 4 or 5 people playing Keno. You find 6 or 7 people getting their scratch tickets, and you can't even get a cup of coffee. Because you're knee deep in people that are gambling
Sure,
with the
yeah.
state lottery. Now, another thing that the state lottery wants to do is they want to expand into online gambling. And why do they need to expand? Because their traditional sources of revenue are drying up. People get tired of it. The novelty wears off. They have to introduce a new Keno game in order to keep people playing Keno.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have to introduce new stuff, and they're always trying to introduce new stuff. And one of the things that they want to introduce is online gambling. I had an opportunity to write an editorial, an op-ed for Globe West a couple of weeks ago. It appeared in the Sunday Globe West. The pro side of the online gambling was a state senator who was saying that she wanted to see us go into the online gambling because the state needs the revenue. Well, I ended my diatribe against online gambling by saying if the state needs revenue for these projects, they should raise the revenue through appropriate and fair taxation. Lotteries and online gambling and everything else, it's just taxation by exploitation, and it puts our state legislators and people in state government in an awkward position of they have to promote business practices that are actually harmful to the citizens of the state. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And your thoughts on the lottery expanding into online gambling?
Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I agree in the sense that if it is a revenue issue, don't disguise it as a revenue issue. Do you know what I'm saying? If you have a revenue issue, then it ought to be taxed. You ought to appropriate, find a revenue stream that makes sense, that feeds whatever need there is. If it's a gas tax, it ought to go to highways or whatever. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that type of thing. The gambling itself, the scratch tickets and all of that sort of thing. I mean, it is a choice, and I think it is important to leave that choice to people. I choose not to do it,
Right, me too.
It's not really what I want to do, but, I don't golf, do you know what I mean? So,
Right.
So that means, like, I'm not going to eliminate all golf courses,
Right.
So I think it's important to have, but, it's got to be reasonable, it's got to be limited. And I think reasonable steps ought to be taken to not try to push it down to younger people, to
And that's-
hook younger generations.
That's my big fear with the online gambling is that we're in the information age. My daughter has had a computer mouse in her hand since she was 2 years old. She doesn't remember not having a computer with a mouse.
Sure.
She's grown up in the information age with tablet computers and smartphones. All kids have these days, and that online gambling, that's just a lure for them. They're used to spending money on their phone.
Sure.
Right now.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a lure for them. Today's information age kid is tomorrow's
Right.
gambling addict.
Right.
And
So I would say that I would think I would have to see, the lottery be in some real dire straits before I would, look towards that avenue of revenue. It would not really be my first choice. I see that it serves a purpose. I see that there are people that are interested in doing it, and they enjoy doing it, and you know, more power to them. Again, it's a choice, but to try to expand that scope, I think is a little bit of a different issue.
Yeah, yeah. So Brian, we're down to 3 minutes left. Let's revisit, I don't know, how about solar power? I love solar power.
Yeah, I guess you do, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I work in the solar
Yeah.
power industry.
Yeah.
I have 2 jobs these days. I work
Yeah.
in the self-storage industry, and
Okay.
and I'm also working in the solar power industry. So, you know, I
I
really...
think it's a great industry.
Oh, it is. It's
It's a
tremendous.
great industry,
Yeah.
and I would do everything I could to encourage that industry.
It's going better and better these days. The prices are getting lower and lower. You wouldn't think that they could go any lower. We just dropped our prices again. Just a couple of weeks ago, my boss announced that you know, prices are dropping again. I had to modify my spreadsheets to
Yeah.
you know, where I
Yeah.
prepare my proposals.
And I think that's great because that means it's expanding, it's getting
Yeah.
out there. And the more solar use you have, the less dependency you have on oil, gas, and other things.
Right.
And that's where the country needs to go.
Right.
And I see so many pluses because now not only are you making smart energy choices, you're encouraging a growth of a good industry.
Right. One of the things that I've seen, James Hansen, the climate scientist at NASA, came up with this plan. He said we should institute a carbon tax, and we should take the proceeds of that tax and deliver it right back to the American people. So if we institute a carbon tax and rebate that money directly to the American people, there's really no net impact on you or me, because while we'll pay more for our energy, we'll get the more money right back in our own pocket. What that amounts to is it really rewards those people who adopt a low carbon profile. So if I have solar panels on my roof and they're generating my own power, and I'm getting money back from this carbon tax that I'm not actually spending, I'm making out better. And that makes it more attractive for people to go with an electric car or solar panels on the roof or anything along those lines.
Sure.
So, you know, I
Yeah.
thought that was one of the greatest ideas. It's something that would be really difficult to create on a statewide level.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
just doing it in a state, somebody could perhaps go over the border into Rhode Island or New Hampshire or anywhere else, Connecticut, and buy their gasoline there and
Right.
not pay that carbon tax.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
so there are drawbacks to it to try and implement it in the states, but
Right,
something on a
right.
national level that could be something that would be really something
Sure.
to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's the direction to go, you know, and I support wind power too. I mean, you see the windmills.
Sure.
And I mean, I think all of that is great stuff.
Well, you look at something like the community of Fall River, right? They could be producing windmills and floating them right out into the Sound.
Sure.
And building them.
Sure.
You know, there'd be
Yeah.
no reason not to.
Yeah.
So it looks like we're just about out of time.
All
So,
right.
Brian, thank you so much for
All right,
being here.
John.
We've had a great conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate
Good-
it.
Good luck in your run for state rep. You've been watching All Politics is Local. All Politics is Local is a production of the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems. For more information about the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems, feel free to visit our website at www.gbvdems.org. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, everybody.